"Where the hell did you get that rifle?" Staff Sergeant Pierce snapped, his voice cutting across the range as he glared at Maya Rodriguez, crouched low behind the weapon. She had no business with an M40A5. She wasn't listed in the sniper platoon, and her file carried no marksmanship credentials. Officially, she was nothing more than a supply tech, meant to count gear, not put it to use. But when Colonel Williams stepped in and caught sight of her grip and her eyes behind the scope, he froze. That stance, that rifle, they belonged to someone he thought was gone. Maya Rodriguez wasn't supposed to touch weapons. Her job was counting bullets, not firing them. Her assignment was inventory duty, tedious and unremarkable, logging ammunition, tracking gear, recording serial numbers, filing reports that vanished into bureaucratic voids. Soldiers only acknowledged her to shove forms across a desk, treating her like a supply kiosk in uniform. But that afternoon at Fort Blackstone, everything changed. The firing range was alive with chaos. Rifle cracks split the afternoon air like rolling thunder. Shouted corrections bounced from the concrete walls. Laughter echoed between the lanes where soldiers tried to prove themselves with steel and lead. Among those marksmen and fresh trainees stood a woman in standard fatigues. No special tabs, no sniper's patch, no elite badge demanding respect. Maya carried a clipboard more often than a weapon. Her presence was so ordinary most soldiers barely noticed her, as if she blended into the furniture. She moved through Fort Blackstone like a ghost, invisible to those who measured worth by rank and reputation. The Nevada desert sun beat down mercilessly on the outdoor range, creating heat mirages that danced across the targets. Dust devils spun lazily in the distance, and the air shimmered with intensity that made accurate shooting nearly impossible for most marksmen. Before we continue, please comment below where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe to the She-Force Tales channel. Staff Sergeant Pierce stood behind the firing line, his weathered face creased with authority and 30 years of military service. He was the kind of NCO who'd earned his stripes through blood, sweat, and countless hours proving himself superior to those around him. His voice carried the sharp dismissal of a man who'd spent decades putting people back in their place. "Rodriguez, what the hell are you doing here?" Pierce barked when he noticed Maya approaching the weapons rack. "This isn't the supply depot. These rifles aren't for inventory." The other soldiers turned, their attention drawn like sharks sensing blood in the water. Corporal Thompson, a cocky marksman from Tennessee, let out a loud laugh. "Look what we got here, boys. Supply girl wants to play soldier. Probably never even held a real weapon," added Specialist Marcus Chun, adjusting his shooting glasses with a smirk. "Thinks she knows which end the bullets come out of." Private First Class David Johnson, barely 19 and desperate to fit in with the senior soldiers, joined the chorus. "Maybe she thinks it's like the video games they got in the rec room." Maya ignored the jeers, offering no defense to their cheap assumptions. Instead, she moved toward the M40A5 sniper rifle with a confidence that made words unnecessary. The weapon gleamed under the harsh desert sun, its scope reflecting like a predator's eye waiting to strike. "That's not for you, soldier," Pierce said, his tone carrying decades of putting subordinates in their place. "Where do you even get the idea to touch it? You're inventory, not infantry." The laughter grew louder, their confidence swelling with each cruel joke. But one or two voices faltered when they noticed her movements. No clumsy fumbling, no uncertain guessing, but deliberate precision like a surgeon preparing for a critical operation. Maya examined the weapon with the patience of someone who knew every piece by heart. Her fingers glided across the steel like a pianist on familiar keys. She cycled the bolts smoothly, tested the trigger with professional care, and adjusted the bipod with micro-movements that spoke of countless hours of hidden practice. "Go on, let's watch you miss," Thompson sneered, his words carrying the cruel confidence of a man never truly proven wrong. "This should be entertaining." Sergeant Pierce crossed his arms, his expression a mixture of amusement and annoyance. "You got 30 seconds to prove you're not wasting everyone's time, Rodriguez. Then you put that rifle back and get back to your paperwork." The range had targets set at various distances, 200, 400, 600, and 750 yards. The farthest targets were barely visible through the heat haze, shimmering like mirages in the desert air. Even experienced marksmen struggled with accuracy at those distances under these conditions. Maya's movements showed no hesitation, no trace of uncertainty, nothing that hinted at someone still learning. The soldiers watching her began to feel an unease they couldn't name, a shift in the air that made their laughter sound shallow and forced. She carried herself with the calm assurance of someone who had nothing left to prove, only the ability to demonstrate when the moment arrived. What they mistook for ignorance was silence filled with history, experience sealed away behind walls of classification few would ever see. As she slid into the prone position behind the rifle, the noise of Fort Blackstone's range dimmed. It wasn't silence. The desert wind died to a whisper, and the heat mirages seemed to still. Maya adjusted her stance with methodical care, every motion measured and intentional. Her breathing slowed into a rhythm so steady it felt meditative, her body molding into the rifle as if the two had been engineered to operate together. The onlookers waited for the clumsy signs of a novice overwhelmed. But what they saw instead made the edges of their grins falter. She exhaled slowly, each breath a controlled release etched into her muscles through endless repetitions. Her finger found the trigger with the gentleness of someone who knew that accuracy came from patience, never brute force. The rifle ceased to be an object in her hands and instead became an extension of her body. "Target, 750 yards, Maya said quietly, her voice carrying no emotion, no bravado, just simple statement of fact. The first shot cracked through the range, carrying an authority that crushed every voice into silence. The round drilled straight through the bull's eye at 750 yards, the hole so perfectly placed it seemed divine rather than human. For the first time that day, Fort Blackstone's range fell silent. The usual chaos of noise vanished, as if someone had cut the power. Eyes locked on the digital monitor, displaying the impossible confirmation of what they had just witnessed. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. Maya cycled the bolt smoothly, the metallic sound echoing like a declaration of intent. There was no triumphant celebration, no nod to the perfect strike, only the mechanical calm of preparing for the next shot. Without pause, she fired again, and then once more, each shot finding the same impossible center. The grouping was so precise it looked like a single enlarged hole, a level of consistency even seasoned snipers rarely achieved under the best of conditions. Thompson's smirk dissolved like morning mist, replaced with wide-eyed disbelief. That's not possible. Not in this heat. Not at that distance." Chun lowered his own rifle, staring at the target display. "The computer must be malfunctioning. No way those shots are real." But the evidence was undeniable, stamped in digital precision by the automated scoring system. 3 perfect shots, each one dead center, the grouping so tight it defied the laws of physics as they understood them. Staff Sergeant Pierce's confident demeanor cracked like poorly maintained armor. His mouth opened and closed without sound, his decades of experience providing no framework for what he was witnessing. Then came the heavy thud of approaching boots, each step commanding the weight of authority that made even senior NCOs straighten their postures. Colonel Daniel Williams entered the range with the stride of a man used to being the most formidable presence in any room. Williams was a legend at Fort Blackstone, a career officer who'd served in 3 different conflicts and earned a chest full of medals that told stories most soldiers only heard in whispered rumors. He had the kind of presence that made junior officers nervous and senior enlisted snap to attention without thinking. Yet his confident pace faltered halfway when his eyes locked on Maya Rodriguez behind the M40A5. His weathered face drained of color, struck by recognition like a physical blow. "Where did you get that rifle?" Williams asked, but his voice carried no anger, no bark of command, only recognition. The haunted tone of a man confronting something that should not exist. Maya looked up from the scope, meeting his eyes with a calm that seemed to reach into his memories and pull out something he'd tried to forget. Williams had seen that stance before, that controlled calm, that deadly precision. A memory surged from 3 years past, a mission in the mountains of Afghanistan where his unit had been pinned under enemy fire, trapped with no way out. Salvation had come from an angle no one thought possible. Sniper fire, so precise it seemed to rewrite physics itself. Threats erased with shots that even veteran sharpshooters would have called fantasy. 9 confirmed kills at distances well past 1,100 meters, each one a flawless headshot delivered under conditions that should have made such accuracy impossible. 42 American lives had been saved that day, and then the sniper had vanished like smoke, leaving no trace. The reports were sealed instantly, the shooter's identity cut from every document, erased from official history for reasons buried deep within national security. But Williams remembered the radio chatter, the whispered rumors, the unspoken acknowledgement that someone extraordinary had walked among them. The phantom sniper they called Desert Wind, a ghost who appeared when American soldiers needed salvation and disappeared before anyone could get a clear look. "Sir," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying the same steady professionalism she used when filing supply reports. Williams stared at her for a long moment, his mind racing through classified memories and impossible connections. The woman before him was supposed to be a supply technician, a paper pusher with no combat training and no weapon qualifications beyond basic rifle proficiency. But watching her with the M40A5, seeing the way she held the weapon with casual expertise, remembering those impossible shots that had saved his men in the Hindu Kush Mountains, Williams knew beyond doubt he was staring at the phantom who had once saved his life before vanishing in a legend. "As you were, specialist," Williams said finally, his voice carefully controlled. But his eyes never left her face, and a weight of recognition hung between them like classified smoke. The other soldiers looked between their colonel and Maya, sensing undercurrents they couldn't understand. The atmosphere had shifted from mockery to something approaching reverence, though none of them quite knew why. Maya calmly finished her shooting cycle with professional precision, clearing the weapon and returning it to its rack as if nothing remarkable had just happened. She then reached for her clipboard once more, slipping back in her role as though the last 10 minutes had been nothing more than an interlude. She didn't justify herself, didn't acknowledge Colonel Williams's recognition, didn't deny what everyone had seen. Her silence carried more weight than any speech, sharper than boasting, heavier than threats. Thompson approached cautiously, his earlier bravado completely vanished. "Ma'am, where did you learn to shoot like that?" Maya looked at him with eyes that seemed older than her years. "Practice," she said simply, then turned and walked toward the range exit. As she passed Colonel Williams, he spoke quietly, his words meant only for her. "Desert Wind." She paused for just a moment, meeting his eyes. "Some missions never happened, Colonel. Some people were never there." Then she was gone, leaving behind a range full of soldiers who suddenly understood they knew nothing about the woman they'd been working alongside for months. Williams watched her go, his mind racing through implications that reached far beyond Fort Blackstone. Maya Rodriguez wasn't just a supply technician who happened to be an excellent marksman. She was something far more dangerous, a weapon disguised as human, operating under cover so deep that even he hadn't been read into her true mission. The colonel's recognition alone confirmed she was more than her file suggested. When a full colonel showed both fear and reverence toward a logistics clerk, only fools ignored the message. His pale shock spoke volumes to anyone fluent in the silent language of rank and respect. From that day forward, Fort Blackstone shifted, its atmosphere altered like the sky before a storm. The range itself seemed changed, charged with an invisible current that gave even routine drills new weight. Soldiers who once scoffed now stepped carefully when Maya was near, their movements precise, their respect clear. Some tried to question her, driven by curiosity and the need to understand, but most remained quiet, sensing instinctively that the answers weren't theirs to claim. The sharpest ones realized ignorance might be their only safeguard. Rumors spread across Fort Blackstone like wildfire, mutating with each retelling. They whispered about the woman with the M40A5, the one who had made Colonel Williams freeze as though he'd seen a ghost step out of the armory. Some whispered that Maya Rodriguez had once been part of special operations. Others muttered about black programs hidden far beyond ordinary military structures. The truth stayed buried in files locked under clearances most soldiers would never come near. But the impact was undeniable. One demonstration had rewritten the entire social order at Fort Blackstone, transforming her from overlooked support staff into someone respected not for rank or title, but for undeniable ability. Maya never sought recognition for what she had shown, never used her revealed talent to angle for easier duty or special treatment. She continued her clerical tasks with the same quiet professionalism she had always carried. When she walked the halls, voices dipped into hushed tones, the kind reserved for things both respected and feared. Salutes snapped sharper, delivered with the reverence soldiers usually offered to veterans whose stories spoke of survival against impossible odds. The jokes about a supply tech pretending to be a soldier vanished from the base overnight, replaced by a new understanding that job titles did not define the whole of the person wearing the uniform. Excellence doesn't ask for permission. It simply reveals itself when a moment demands it.